Thank you very much. So are there questions? Yes, go ahead.
Yael, in the architecture from the UAVs to the ground, you're planning on using E-band, which implies that the distribution locally would be by Wi-Fi or something?
Yes, that's correct. So E-band would be used for the gateway links, so from fiber connectivity up to the aircraft, and then what would be distributed to devices on the ground, which would not be direct to handset, would be, through Wi-Fi redistribution. That's the general idea.
Thanks.
A wonderful presentation. Thanks very much. I didn't understand the two different concepts. One, measuring the amount of data flow to cover the whole world at a certain amount of data per month, for example. That's quite small. And your point that it's not the amount of information that's needed that's the constraint. But there still is the constraint of the physical connectivity, what system to bring in. And that graph wasn't showing that problem. How?
That's right.
And so I'm confused about the situation in Africa. Is it dreadful or is it easily solvable? And at what level? Is it easily solvable for up to 80% or up to 70%, and it's dreadful for the last 10%, or is it dreadful all the way along? Or I couldn't catch the bottom line, as it were. Is it just a matter, quote, just a matter of putting down enough fiber among Africa's cities that is really the key here? And if that's the key, is that a $5 billion public investment needed to do that, or is it a very different problem from putting fiber in place?
That's a great question. So I think I'll approach it from two perspectives. So the graph that I showed on sort of that cumulative distribution. So on the far right side, which today any rural connectivity that happens today is not done via fiber, it's done via sort of conventional, sort of older technology, geosynchronous satellites. That has been a market that, at least in sub-Saharan Africa, has not been competitive.
Right.
And that's what has led to this
That's
market.
VSAT, basically.
Yeah, that's what's led to this market pricing that just, to me, just seems
impossible.
Impossible. Now, a new entrant or other sort of market factors that brings in much, much lower cost connectivity is imminently doable.
Okay.
And perhaps our follow-on speaker may have some commentary on that. I think that is very, very possible. On the flip side, looking at fiber connectivity, there's been no shortage of investments in fiber connectivity in Africa. I mean, Facebook itself, we've been public that we have invested in Uganda and so on and so forth. One of the things that I found very interesting just looking at the data, if you look at market pricing of transit capacity of fiber in many African countries, let's take South Africa out for a moment, but Kenya, Nigeria, DRC, et cetera, and you look at what is the price of a megabit of capacity on fiber year on year, and then compare that sort of what you would expect in terms of growth in pricing or decrease in pricing, and compare that to other areas of the world. And it's been flat. And I think one of the challenges is that if you look in general for backhaul pricing in sub-Saharan Africa, it's orders of magnitude more expensive than in developed markets. No.
Technological reasons.
Not for technological reasons. It's just, I think that, so that's why I think that there's been a market failure on both ends.
Why not just regulate it as a utility?
Maybe that's the right answer.
Right. So, to come back to my question, if we were really smart and we had $10 billion or $20 billion to spare, which I think we do, and you wanted to put down is it fiber and microwave? I don't know what it is, but if you wanted to do something so that this would be fairly normal for 85% of the population,
Yeah, so
is that within reach at the first 10 to 20 billion dollars?
I think absolutely, but I think, so,
Because
yes.
it's crazy not to do that.
It's
Straight out
absolutely
crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. But the thing to watch out for on the fiber side is that fiber is a hierarchical business. It starts from subsea cables, then goes inland to municipalities and metros. So to attack that problem, you have to create competition at all levels.
Or regulate the price.
Or regulate the process at all levels.
Right, okay.
So, but yes, my personal belief is that, yes, $20 billion gets you a lot of progress.
Oh, sorry, I might have.
And just a last question. Would it be possible in this world of highly proprietary knowledge about all these issues, and maybe you have the best data on all of it now, would it be possible to have an objective, analytical, publicly accessible treatment of this issue, or is this highly proprietary from a company's point of view because you're competing with whether Google or Huawei or somebody else is going to do this? Or could we actually treat this as a public good that African leaders and the Secretary General of the UN and the Pope should know, and here's a model of how this should be done?
Fantastic question. I definitely believe that there should be more public data sets to be able to make these sort of objective decisions and motivations for policy decisions or investments and things like that. We've tried to play our part, in terms of the population data sets that we've been working on with the Earth Institute and the World Bank. In terms of connectivity data sets, I think one of the things that we are hoping will happen is that, Facebook represents obviously one internet website. The GSMA, on the other hand, does track internet usage on a quarterly or yearly basis on a per country level. There's no public data sets that span between those two extremes, right? And so I think there's an incredible opportunity to think about ways in which we can get more spatial granularity, more time granularity to drive policy and investment decisions worldwide.
Okay, so can we respect the order? Allow me to go in order. Okay. So that 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. Well, this is a meeting about connectivity, and one of the places in the world where they talk a lot about connectivity is China. China was absent from your maps, and we understand why. My question is, how do you see the future with China? I mean, in China, of course, WeChat has become a great platform and has created a great deal of their own connectivity. At the same time, they talk a great deal about Belt and Road, and again, the key concept in Belt and Road is connectivity. However, it's understood in a much more basic way about infrastructure, traffic infrastructure essentially. But this is not satisfactory. I think one has to look into this relationship in a more long-term perspective. Can you share any of your experiences with China or any of your thoughts about the future of connectivity relating to China?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I can't share anything about our perspective plans or anything like that in China just because we don't operate there. But I think as a country, they've made tremendous progress in terms of connectivity over the last several years. I mean, if I recall, they have over 700 million people that are online getting connectivity on a regular basis. Seems like there's lots of competition among services such as WeChat and others. So yeah, I think they're making fantastic progress.
Okay, it's a sort of progress that we don't really share. Go ahead.
Facebook, as far as I understand, does quite a bit of investment in the business development in East Africa, Kenya, for instance, Uganda. And I was wondering what that business model is and how it might be tweaked towards public goods providing organizations. Of course, you are a business, if paid for, say, the health sector and the education sector. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two aspects of how we're thinking about investment. So one is on the infrastructure side. So I've made a brief mention to an investment we have in shared infrastructure in Uganda. So we are investing in fiber capacity in cooperation with other mobile operators to provide shared infrastructure. And the hope is that as we have significant investments in our infrastructure for our own services, data centers and subsea cables, et cetera, we're hoping to take some of that learning and apply it to some of these networks such that the cost structures of those networks can be decreased substantially. So just as one example of what our motivation is, a lot of times if you go to a mobile network operator or other types of operators that provide telco services, one of the first things that they want to show you that they're very proud of is something called a network operations center. So these are these facilities that contain people and big screens and so on and so forth. And everybody's very, very proud and excited to show you how they can have these big screens monitoring their data. As a company, we do not have a network operations center. In fact, we don't have groups of people that manage our network. It's all been automated. Machines drive this, and in the end, one person on a laptop at any given time in an 8-hour cycle manages our network. And so just this is one example where we're trying to see if we can work with other partners in industry to drive best practices to dramatically lower the cost of backhaul access to Jeffrey Sachs's point around market failures. On the flip side, on the content side, we do make investments in a lot of local content as well as trying to encourage local developers to develop content for whatever services that people are providing. This isn't necessarily for Facebook platform or anything like that, but to increase the level of participation and education around app development and web development to help content providers do that. And so that may be in the education sector, entertainment, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. I think there was one example around the Mama maternal web service, and that's something that we have supported as a company over the years as well.
I'm back sort of at Jeffrey's question before, and it feels a little out of order, but I want to say two things. One is that when we talk about bandwidth, ascribing a certain number of gigabytes per month is a very bad way to do it. That's like telling somebody you have access to the library, but you can only read 2,500 words, and then next month you can read another 2,500. I think the measure, or I know the measure really, is really bits per second. And that will vary. If you're a kid using it from midnight to 8 a.m., you may get large amounts of it. If you're using it from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., you'll get less. And it's a variable. So I think that's a healthier way of thinking about it. And the second remark is that while there is a history of telecommunications, in fact, 90% of the history of telecommunications is sort of point-to-point or point-to-multi-points. And suddenly we can, and the next speaker will talk about it, think per square inch. Every square inch of the planet has 10 megabits each way. And it doesn't matter where you are, you've got it. It's a little bit like iridium on steroids. And if you had iridium on steroids, suddenly you could do all of Africa. You could do it actually in 2 years for $5 billion. It's done. But if you put fiber, that's going to take you a lot longer, only because just you're dealing with 55 countries or whatever the number is, and you're getting them all to do certain things, and there's a geometry, and where do you lay it first, and then you dig the trench, or you lay it over the ground. So I think the per square inch mindset is new and is also something we should keep in mind.
If I can just comment, Nicholas, the original version of my slides didn't have gigabytes per month. They actually had kilobits per second. But I didn't know if anybody would actually find meaning from that, so I tried to turn it back into gigabytes. But those are all average rates, right? So someone could consume 100 gigabytes and someone could consume 5 megabytes, but you average out to that number. So it's not meant to be indicative that it's restrictive.
Thank you. So we turn now to the next speaker, which I think is going to give another vision or a complementary vision to connectivity. Go ahead, Mr. Luke.
Thank you.